NFL quarterback Cam Newton is making headlines for his response to a female reporter's question. Let's take a look.
I know you take a lot of pride in seeing your receivers play well. Devin Funchess has seemed to really embrace the physicality of his routes and getting those extra yards. Does that give you a little bit of an enjoyment to see him kind of truck sticking people out there?
It's funny to hear a female talk about routes. Like, it's funny. But fun is coming along, man. We're gonna. This is a big game for him because of him being from Detroit.
So that wasn't a particularly funny question. Jourdan Rodrigue was the beat reporter for the Carolina Panthers. She has said on Twitter that she wasn't asking about routes to be funny. She was doing it because it was her job. She also went on to say, because a lot of people were asking, well, did you speak with Cam Newton following this interaction? She said on Twitter, I spoke with him after and it was worse. I chose not to share because I have an actual job to do today and one he will not keep me from. A lot of media organizations have spoken out about Cam's response. People are saying it was very inappropriate. One was the Association for Women in Sports Media. They said the following: AWSM is very discouraged by Cam Newton's disrespectful remarks and actions directed to a female reporter during today's Carolina Panthers press conference. As a watchdog group, AWSM demands fair treatment and positive workplace environments for women working in sports media. Now, a lot of people that I've seen online, I talked about this with the TYT sports team, who are excellent. Please check out their channel. Are saying, well, what is the importance of having female representation in a male-dominated industry? Well, let's just remember that nearly 50% of NFL fans are women, so they should be represented there, because without fans, you don't have a league. And then also, it's worth noting that Dannon has decided they will not renew a contract with him. I've heard it reported that Dannon dropped him. That's not the case. They're just not renewing their contract. And now, with that said, we have an all-female panel today to discuss why these remarks are inappropriate and disrespectful. What was your response when you saw this? Were you surprised?
Well, I don't know anything about him, so was I surprised? No. When people were mentioning his name, I'm like, I don't know who that guy is. So I didn't know anything about his background. And the reason why I say I'm not surprised is because, that mentality still exists in the sports world, where it's like surprising to some people that women are interested in sports, that women want to report on sports. And I'm also not surprised because it involves an NFL player, and the culture around the NFL, even considering the fact that 50% or half of their viewers are women and half of their consumers are women, more importantly, they still try to back their players when in domestic assault cases. Those stories were running rampant a couple of years ago. They back their players when it comes to most situations like this, and they'll try to brush it under the rug. And even today, I forget which NFL official it was, I apologize, but I was listening to his statement, and he essentially said, he kind of brushed it off and then said, but I'd rather talk about this upcoming game, and immediately talked about the upcoming game. So look, I think it's important to consider that in a lot of households, the female has a considerable amount of buying power. She budgets the money. I'm not saying that that's the most important thing to consider, but for those of you who are like, oh, whatever, who cares? Don't hurt. You're hurting some people's feelings. It's not a big deal. Well, it will hurt your bottom line. So if you think it's not that big of a deal, I mean, we'll see how that turns out when your ticket sales decrease and your merchandise sales decrease. And then one other thing, someone had mentioned to me, I was debating a man over this, and he's like, I don't think that's what he meant. I was like, okay, so what did he mean? And I'm curious, does anyone have an answer for that? Because the individual I was debating couldn't give me an answer.
About what his potential intention could have been
by laughing? What was he implying by laughing?
I don't know. I mean, what I would think is that he probably is interviewed a lot by men who are not professional football players. Now, it'd be different if she was playing an armchair quarterback and saying, oh, you missed that throw, like I could have done that. People do that sometimes. It's not good reporting. That's not what she did. She asked a very legitimate question. And if you were to have said that Jourdan is actually a pretty gender neutral name, say that Jourdan was a man, I don't think that he would have found the question as funny, even though, she may be, or he or she doesn't have any football experience. Does that make sense? I think the only thing that I could think of is that he's laughing at a reporter asking a question that he presumes she'd have no experience over, but you don't need to have played the sport to have extensive knowledge of it.
No, dude, he
most
specifically
reporters-
mentioned female. I think his wording was so specific. I just find it funny that a female is mentioning routes.
All right, so then
Okay.
would it have been different if he had said, I just find it funny that a reporter is asking me about routes. What do you know about routes? You haven't played the game. Would this be a news story?
Maybe some people would make it a news story, but I don't think that it would be as clear. And I don't even know if we would ever talk about it.
Most
right?
reporters haven't played. You know what I mean? That's why they were reporting. You know, so I think the story is the obvious sexism. What bothers me is that he laughs in her face.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, it's just disrespectful. It's stupid.
So condescending.
It's really condescending and it's stupid. And to your point about the bottom line, you know, you lost a yogurt endorsement. Bitches eat yogurt. Like, you gotta pay attention to who, you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing?
But
like,
he's still signed to Under Armour, and Under Armour, like, they're not gonna budge. Like, he still has other endorsements.
Yeah,
He's
Under Armour is
fine.
also problematic for different reasons. But, you know, I will say that this whole story is a good lesson in intersectionality, in that it did come out that this reporter, in her background, has some unsavory, potentially racist tweets.
Yeah.
So then now the conversation is about, you know, she's racist and he's sexist, right? Like, again, my point, my motto is that two things can be true. Everybody needs to get their politics together. Cam, NFL, get your gender politics together.
And another thing that when we were covering the story that I asked our sports team about, that they brought up, is that there's a little bit of a double standard. They cited Rob Gronkowski is another NFL player, and they're saying that he's made sort of inappropriate remarks to reporters, female reporters, and I don't know the specifics of those statements, but I trust Jason Rubin very much, and he said that, you know, when he does that, he's being playful, he's messing around. Now Cam Newton makes this remark, which is, again, it's still disrespectful, and he comes under national media scrutiny.
Sure.
And we don't see that carried over. Rob Gronkowski is a white player, just for reference.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, right.
Sure, all of this is racialized. I mean, our president is not under scrutiny, doesn't fall under the same kind of scrutiny. And he's said awful things about women. But I do think, again, that two things can be true, that like, if we don't wanna be disrespected, let's work on our politics, our race politics, our gender politics, our politics around sex, right? Like, we need to be better. And I think that it's interesting that these two things kind of come to the fore at the same time.
If you like this video, you'll love the whole TYT network. Check it out at tytnetwork.com/join.